Instead of going sideways. I mean, that's fine.
Councillor Wilson, can you take your seat, please? We're live in 5 seconds. Thank you very much, councillors. I'll call to order the council order paper 22nd of October. Today's date, obviously. Reminder, councillors, that we are live streaming, please. And welcome to all of those out there watching and listening in. In terms of the order paper today, we have no public forum. I have an apology from Councillor Jill Duncan. Everybody else is present. Would somebody like to say so move, please? Thank you, Councillor Carter, Councillor Hero. All those in favour? Aye. Thank you. Carried. I'll remind councillors, please, around the rules around members' conflicts of interest. Is anybody declaring an interest with any item at this stage? You can declare later at each item if you need. Thank you. I'm moving straight on. Confirmation of order of business. We have a presentation at 3:15 on the Tie Happy facilities.
Item number 12, yes.
Item 12, thank you. Staff, are there any other changes of order of business that I should be aware of? And we have one late item from Central Otago District Council around an update to the wine excise tax. In terms of confirmation of minutes, I'll refer you to attachment 1, pages 8 through to 26, looking for alterations and corrections. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, and 26, looking for alterations or corrections. Would somebody like to so move? Thank you to Councillor Dunn, Councillor Ash. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Move to item number 7, the Mayor's report. This is attachment 2, pages 27 to 31. I will take it as a tabled report. The only thing I'd add to it was there was a meeting the other night around Martin becoming a predator-free town, and the turnout was huge. Congratulations to Councillor Kath Ash and Alan Carlisle. They're the correct people. Nobody else I need to.
Kevin Randalls.
But their view is that we could have a trap in every fifth house in Martin, aimed initially at mice and rats. Take any comments, any questions around my report? Councillor Dalgety first.
Sorry, I think I've lost my highlighter, but somewhere here you mentioned the Rangitikei River Accord, and it was actually the Rangitikei community, the RCC group, rather than the Rangitikei River Accord.
Yeah. Sorry, I'll acknowledge that, and acknowledge that there are a number of accords as well. Any further questions or comments on my report? This report was written just before the elections, obviously, and we've had national returned and Ian McKelvey. I have rung him and congratulated him. I've rung Adrian and congratulated him. And I've also put in a call to Soraya My view is that I think she's about 2 away on the list, which probably means that over the course of Parliament's term, she's likely to be in Parliament. So congratulations to the party and her did well. What we will face as a consequence of the election will be especially that there is now an absolute right to govern by Labour alone. You'll face a barrage of legislation that will come out in the next 100 days. Equally, if National had been able to govern alone, you would face exactly the same thing. So they're not dependent on minor parties. So you will see a greater rate of change, if you like. Any other questions, any comments? I'll move the adoption of my report. I'll be seconded to that. Councillor Nigel Belsham, Deputy Mayor. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Moving to item number 8, the follow-up items from previous meetings, attachment 3, pages 32 through to 35. The report is attached. Ms. Gordon, do you wish to speak to it?
Just to say that in your table documents, there's another 4 items that when we're going through other agendas in minutes, these ones hadn't been included in the original table, and I thought for completeness it was probably worth letting you know that we had we're doing some action on each of those. So I'll just quickly run through what they are, and then I can take there's all the agenda here and questions on any of the other ones. So we had a request from the Cherokee Community Committee about building a dry vault 24-hour toilet. So Ms. Prince and her community services property team are looking into that, and they will provide an update when they have some information available on that one. We were also asked to investigate whether the Caledonian Society can apply for funds through the small grant scheme without jeopardising access from funds from the event sponsorship team. And this one, although they're technically not able to apply for both those funds, it has been done in the past. So a decision will be, a recommendation will be put to the Cherokee Committee to actually make a decision on that themselves. Yep. We've had a request for a Keep Clear bus stop road marking to be installed in Taihape, and Keith Sutherland is working on that. At the moment, we've also had a request for a disability parking in Taihape as well, and he's going to see if he can combine the both. So I've said to him, once he's got a plan, can he produce that in print boards, put it to the Taihape Community Board, and they can have a look at it before it's finalised. And the only other one was just letting you know that we did advise the Registrar General of the cancellation of that building line restriction of that decision which was made last week. So other than that, I'm happy to take any other questions.
Questions from council? No, thank you for the layout and format of the report. It does make it simpler to follow things through and to see who's responsible for. So thank you. Moving then to, would somebody like to move the receipt of the report? Councillor Wilson, second Councillor Gordon. Those in favour? Those against? Right. Moving through to item number 9, the long-term plan 2021-31 October update, attachment 4, pages 36 through to 38. And I'll go back to you, Virginia.
Absolutely. Thank you, Your Worship. This is really just a very brief update so that there's more of a tracking of what's happened at your workshop. So I don't have anything else to add at this stage, but happy to have any questions or comments.
Can I just clarification that there's not going to be something on Friday? That's
right. The early engagement, we because of the funeral that's happening in Martin tomorrow, we felt it was probably better not to hold tomorrow's event. We've rescheduled that to Friday the 6th of November, so we'll hold one on the 6th and the 7th in Martin. So I think I circulated that to you all anyway.
Thank you. Any further questions? Right, somebody moved that the October update be received. Thank you. Councillor Carter, Councillor Dalgety, those in favour? Those against? Carried. Moving the rate of blocks. Item number 10, the Treasury Management Policy. This is attachment 5 through to pages 39 through to 81. Would you like to take us through this?
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. I think you all saw an email I sent out just apologising for a couple of references in the cover note to the Finance and Performance Committee. The paper's not actually formed. This proposed policy's not actually gone to the Finance and Performance Committee formally due to timeliness. The plan was for the committee to see it before it came to council, but time didn't allow that. So there's a couple of references in the cover paper about the Finance and Performance Committee considering and approving this. So that was worded on the basis that it was going to go to the committee, but it didn't. So just in summary, the current policy is 6 years old. It's 32 pages, and I don't know if any of you managed to get through it. It's an awful lot of background in there, as well as being irrelevant information. So what I'm proposing is a clearer version, a more succinct and to the point version. I will just point out in my cover page on page 40, section 2.1, the final sentence says that the proposed Treasury management policy replaces the 5 ratios with 3 similar ratios. I would like to make that 4 similar ratios. There's another one that's part of the 5 in the existing policy that I didn't have in the proposed policy, but I think would be better in there, and I can talk about that in a second. But the rest of the policy, I'm hoping, speaks for itself. But I might just, I think section 4.1 of the existing policy, I'm trying to find a page number. Page, I can't, 42? 52, yeah. Page 52 of the agenda papers, section 4.2 has got the five main, the main section of the liability part of the Treasury management policy. The existing policy has 5 key covenants in there, and the bottom 3 are the 3 that I've got in the proposed policy, although I've changed the numbers to be consistent with what LGFA mandates. The top one is one that I've taken out because the sector's in a bit of, I won't say turmoil, but because of COVID and what it's done to lots of revenue streams for lots of councils, LGFA are playing around with that a fair bit over the next 5 years. So initially I didn't put it in there, but I would now suggest we do have that in there at the LGFA standard rate for non-guaranteeing. I'm getting a bit technical here, but I'll explain later. What I'm saying is I think we should add that to the proposed version at 175%. And then the second one of the 5, I'm just not sure the background to that ratio. It's not in any LGFA documentation. I've not seen it before in any local government lending criteria. So I'd be suggesting that it's not necessary.
So just in terms of clarification, the net external debt per capita is what you're referring to?
Yeah, and that's the one I've not included in the proposed policy. So that's what I want to highlight really, that the proposed policy, and I don't have a hard copy here, is the 7 pages starting. Can't see a page.
That's on page 74.
Page 74.
Yeah.
What I'd be suggesting is we add the net external debt to total revenue ratio in there at 175%. So I'd be suggesting that we consider the proposed policy with that amendment in it.
Thank you. Look, can we, somebody first of all move the report?
I'll move that.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Councillor Nigel Belsham, also Chair of Finance Moving, seconded Councillor Dunn. Do you need to speak to it, or can we just receive it at this stage?
Happy to receive it, but yeah, and then I'll make a recommendation. after that.
Those in favour of reception? Thank you. Carried. Thank you. Will you take questions of the report?
Certainly shall, yes.
I'll follow you, Councillor Belsham.
Yeah, so questions or comments around the report. The comment is this is bringing it into a line with LGFA requirements as far as reporting and auditing standards go. Certainly the previous policy at 32 pages, you could get lost in some of the reporting parts of that policy. So I think this simplifies it for certainly at a governance perspective as well, to understand that Treasury management policy. And I appreciate the efforts that you've gone through to get it to this stage. So yeah, certainly a lot of good work, and it does bring it into a line with LGFA, who will be our major funder for our debt going forward.
Any other questions while you think of it from me? And sorry, I didn't introduce you more formally. And your, when did you start?
I seem like a long time ago.
You were appointed before the previous meeting.
Yes.
So the question I had around was an associated question around borrowing of money, because we will be in that game. We don't have a credit rating. Is that something that a decision that we should take or not take, or will you give us guidance on that in the future? Or how does that association work?
Probably I'd prefer to come back to the next Finance and Performance Committee with a paper on that, with suggestions.
So we'd be referring to something like Standard & Poor's rating.
Standard & Poor's or Fitch are the main two, I believe, yes.
Okay, Councillor Belsham.
To put some formality around the paper and for including that covenant that you suggested, Mr. Toombs, I'd like to move an amendment to the paper to include the lending policy covenant of net debt to total revenue at 170 or less than 175%. So that would have be included in 3.4 of that new paper on page 76. As an added covenant to the two that are listed there.
Sorry, I'm just checking 3.4.
So under 3.4 interest rate exposure, is that where you're adding it into?
I think it'll be the full visit. So I just don't have a copy of it on the right page.
76.
76. Apologies. My page numbers aren't shown. Okay, yes, so section 3.4, liquidity ratios, interest rate exposures. So the one I'm talking about would probably be best settled in 3.5 under that covenant there.
Okay, sorry.
Yes,
So the amendment would go into 3.5.
Yeah.
So are you seeking an amendment, or do you
Well, it's just for formalising the including of that that covenant that Mr. Toombs has spoken about. So the net debt to total revenue ratio.
Yeah. So you're wishing to move that as an amendment?
Yes. Yeah.
I'll second it.
You're seconding
Yes.
that as an amendment?
As an amendment, yes.
So are you happy then, because we haven't actually got a motion at this stage, but what you're then suggesting is that council does adopt, so that council adopts the Treasury management policy as amended?
As amended.
And that the amendment would be?
I'm happy to, whichever process you want, but I'm happy to amend it first and then adopt it, or as amended. So, I mean, I would rather see the amendment put into the policy.
Move the amendment.
Yeah.
Do you wish to speak further to it?
No, I think we've clarified the reasoning for it.
All right. Councillors, you happy if I put that to a vote?
Excuse me, so we need to make sure we've got all the list of councillors who are voting.
Set at less than 175%.
$75 or $175?
175.
Would need to refer to 3.5 as a section, and in section 3.5 or something like that. Does that cover it?
Yes, yeah.
Mr. Toombs, are you okay with that?
Sure.
Take any further questions from councillors over this? If everyone's happy, I'll now put the amendment to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. So then, are you happy to
So
move
I'm happy to
to?
move to, now that the amendment's been made, that council adopts the Treasury management policy
As amended.
as amended.
Looking for a seconder to that. Councillor
One
Wilson,
second again.
you wish to speak to the motion?
No, other than this reduces it down into plain speak and is a lot clearer to understand as far as reporting processes go.
Any other speakers to the motion? Right, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Moving to item 11, the application of the Parks Upgrade Partnership Fund. This is attachment 6, pages 82 through to 96. This is the application from Martin School. First of all, would somebody move that the application be received only? Councillor Dunn, Councillor Carter, those in favour? Those against? Carried. This is in response to the request for $50,000 from the Partnership Upgrade Fund in terms of building a, what's the technical word for the track?
Pump track.
Pump track. Thank you very much. Mr. Bennett, are you taking us through this report?
No, unfortunately not.
I thought you were the expert on bike road and pump tracks.
Yeah, I thank you, Mr. Your Worship. I put the report in here, but Mr. Toombs can give us some advice about whether there is funding available within that partnership fund.
Okay, I've got some information there. I've not had a chance to really dig deep into it. The Parks Upgrade Partnership Fund is a budget. I'm reading this loud, so forgive me if I'm looking like I'm not ad-libbing, because I'm not. The Parks Upgrade Partnership Fund has a budget of 100k every year. Last year and this year, it has been spread over 2 codes: Memorial Hall Car Park and Memorial Hall CONTN. I can find out more detail about what that is. Contribution. This financial year includes a 25k carry forward specifically for the Memorial Hall car park. So this gives a budget this year of, for the Memorial Hall car park, 59 grand, Memorial Hall contribution, 66 grand.
Question from me, I understood that the Parks Upgrade Fund had also been used or tagged to 50k for Ratana,
That's
and my understanding was that it was 150k a year, not 100k, and that there was a carry forward in terms of the Ratana one. Could we get a bit of clarification on that?
Sure, yeah.
Galen's got some
Yeah.
information. Yeah.
Are you able to assist us?
My understanding of the Ratana one, that it was shifted into the next financial year because advice from the community was they wouldn't be ready this financial year to use the funds.
So it's your understanding that I need to find out whether that fund has been fully subscribed. Is that the short answer?
My understanding is that there's still 50,000 available in the fund for this financial year.
I just need to differentiate between my understanding and actual fact. And unless I get it from Dave, sorry, no disrespect to your understanding. Unless I get it unequivocally, it doesn't exist. Sorry, Your Worship.
And that's
Are we able to do that?
clarification.
Yes, are we able to work on that? Get your staff to work on that during the meeting? We can come back to that.
Sure.
Is that
You've got to be very clear on what is it exactly the question is?
How much funding is available within this financial year for this fund?
Okay.
So we'll come back to this item.
Yeah.
So the opportunities, this is an application to a fund that they believe is available. And if the fund was unavailable, it would be an unbudgeted expenditure line item, in my view, if council decide to approve. That's that, as you said?
Yeah.
Thank you. Any further questions that need to be raised around this in case officers need to do any further work in terms of advice to council? Are there any other questions around the report that need clarification? Councillor Dunn?
The only thing, I might have missed it, I don't know, so if this project was to go ahead, it is accessible all the time for the general public?
Not during school hours is my understanding from reading the report. So that it will be accessible to the general public, but not while school is in, which makes sense because those children using it presumably should be at school. Not that adults can't use it. Councillor Delgatti.
I'm interested in what is the life of the surface? When will it need to be redone? And is there an ongoing maintenance cost annually?
It's not stated within the report, but I actually checked with Martin Scholl and they said they will do the upkeep. And so it's possible we can enter into like a memorandum of understanding to clarify all that.
I did access their website. Is it Dirt Dogs or something like that? The name of the company that actually makes them?
Empire of Dirt?
Yeah, I did access their website and they seem to have a very strong reputation. And they've done work somewhere quite unusual offshore. Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, I was just reiterating, carrying on from what Councillor Delgatti said. I think that would be a very, very important factor involving us funding this. The last thing we'd want it to turn into a white elephant, where it just became a weedy, overgrown, forgotten facility. So it's very important that it's included that the maintenance is, within the agreement.
This is a structure that would be on school grounds. They would then have a responsibility rather than a council responsibility to maintain.
Your Worship, can I seek a little bit of clarification? Are we speaking to this matter now, or are we waiting to because I have some other additional information on which may be relevant to discussions happening around the table, but if we're not speaking to it in the form of a motion or anything right now, then perhaps it should be best to wait till later.
Fair point. I was just making sure that if staff were going away to bring further information, I wanted to make sure that there wasn't going to be another request for further information, in much the same way as Prince was asked about maintenance. Are there any further requests for information that staff need? Right, I'll move that we hold this item over until later in the meeting until we've got the answers. Item number 12, the Tai Happy Memorial Park amenities. The report's going to be tabled at the meeting. Are you happy to do that now, or are you wanting to wait until presentation?
I'll take your guidance on that. The author of the report will be here at 3:15. I notionally sleep that time as it is after our break, so we can discuss it here, but I suspect that as a tabled report, it might be better to wait until the experts.
I agree. So we'll pass over on Tai Happy Memorial Park amenities until after 3:15, and we've got further information. Moving to item 13, the costs investigation for additional building at Falls Community Centre. The reports will be provided in a supplementary paper. I have a couple of comments to make about this. The first is that the report, is, as I read it, is really asking us to approve or not approve an unbudgeted expenditure. And council has made a decision. The decision was that we get the information together. In the pure world, it would have been better if we'd had the costs of preparing that report at the time that council made this decision, because effectively we could be overturning the council decision. The second point I'd like to make is I believe that there is another option as well. So one option is to approve the unbudgeted figure. The second option is to say, no, we don't approve it, which would mean potentially the project would die. The third option would be to say that it is deferred until such time as we have had the opportunity to have the schools and other organisations use the building on the basis that we cannot build anything until at least the beginning of next year. So it will be an opportunity to gather further information. Right, could you take us through the table report, Mr. Kennedy, please?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm sure you would all have read the report. I think the only point I really want to make is when we put these numbers together, it's really important to have an accurate project cost plan. And the reasoning behind that is to have a very clear picture of everything that will be included in a new building. And it's a kind of a lesson that we've learned in Falls building, is be sure that you understand the entire scope and get an accurate number around that. So what I've done is I've asked design architects for a building of this function and this size, what needs to go into this building and which disciplines would need to be involved and more or less how many hours. And they put the schedule together. So that comes to the bottom of that table. It's somewhere between call it $26,000 and $37,000. As part of the investigations, we also found that there was a right of way in the agreement for the sale of the property. That becomes a service lane for whatever new developments will happen on their property and needs to be kept clear. So that's something we would need to look at to get around. And also another important point is the architects reminded me that in the beginning, the solution for this was a marquee in the parking lot. It was always known that it might be an issue, and that was the solution. So I've added all of that in the report to make it as comprehensive as I can.
Well, I've just got a clarification around that last comment, because my understanding of the community signed this off. There was a changing room facility under the stage that was for that use, which is now no longer available because of reformatting. That's correct, isn't it?
To be honest, I'm unclear on that. I did not investigate that. It was just what I found when I did this work. I'm sorry, I've done it.
Part of the lessons learned review will be to analyse the decision making that had a plan that showed a changing room under the stage to moving to the second floor area. Now, I haven't seen the records that show that. The lessons learned, I'm sure, will invite that to be considered. However, I know that in the conversations, at least anecdotally, is that the underfloor area, which had no natural light, no natural ventilation, no toilet, and was kept at 6'1", could easily have been considered inappropriate.
Yes. before I go around the room, my understanding of those times were the changing room facilities were potentially under the stage, potentially on the second floor of the building, potentially on the top floor of the building. Councillor Dunn.
First off, in the first lot of plans that the community did see was, yes, there was an under the stage dressing room that wasn't 6.1 high, and it did have a toilet there for in the plans, and that was what they saw. So over time, of course, that has changed, and those user groups were not privy to those changes. The use of the third or second floor for changing rooms, or the library mezzanine area or library area to be used for changing rooms either. They were not informed and were not asked for their opinion on those changes as user groups.
At this stage, can we just, as you people are invited to speak, we haven't got a motion on the floor at the moment. That's the questions around the report.
It's just to clarify that.
Yeah, thank you. I accept that. Further questions from councillors? Councillors, I put effectively 3 options in front of you. There may well be more, but if there are more, then we probably need to signal it. But if somebody needs to put a motion on the floor, unless there are further questions from the report. Councillor Belsham.
Yeah, I will ask a question around that right of way. So that's an absolute requirement for the joint venture partners. That's my question. Is that an absolute requirement?
It's in the signed contract at the moment.
And has any discussion happened with the joint venture partners as to amending that?
No, depending on what it's today.
Questions on the report? Or do you wish to leave the motion?
A question first.
Question?
That
Question, and I'll go Councillor Ward.
to do with that right away, there's still quite a bit of room at the back there without proceeding into the right away.
So there's the area between the tank and the,
Yeah.
there's fence and private property beyond that.
Yeah.
So we would either have to negotiate some right of way on the private property, or I don't know, something.
Cannot the right of way still exist and build a room out the back there?
I suppose if you try and squeeze a triangle in or something like that, I suppose if you could, it would be very challenging.
My question is around the same issue. The right of way extends out of the joint venture partners area, and I would assume that it's inferred that there is a line that continues from that right of way across our section to make it viable.
Yep.
Okay. Approximately where the big black arrow is. Thank you.
In terms of the underfloor, what are the challenges to make that suitable, dropping the floor and putting lighting in, and is that a consideration?
Through you, Mr. Chair, not at the moment. We haven't looked at it.
Supplementary question to that from me. Is that an option that you would look at the time that the report was done, that you would look at to see if that was feasible?
Yeah, it could be. Yeah.
The really answer after a yes or no.
If I may.
At the moment, we've been asked to investigate a new building. So if you would ask us a wider question.
I did ask this the last time we had
Does it capture in the
Assets. Councillor
the area being looked at would be the width of the building, about 14
Councillor,
metres.
you'll need to speak up, please, because people won't go to hear
The
online.
area that's been looked at would be something of a triangle, 14 metres across the back of the hall and 10 metres, 10 to 12 metres down the car park side and back into a triangle. So there is an area in there to be looked at.
I think officers would need to,
Yeah, but that's
to look at the all options.
that's roughly where you stand there looking at it.
Councillors, I need a motion on the table, please, somewhere. Councillor Dunn. Councillor.
I'd like to move recommendation 2. Oh, is it 2?
You'd need to put the words around.
To council approve an unbudgeted expenditure of between 25,950 to 36,850 to investigate the cost estimate of a new changing room building to be added to the existing Bulls Community Centre.
Looking for a seconder to that, so it's a live motion. Do you wish to speak to it?
I think you would have all seen the supporting letters. There's 2, but there are many more. There's a few more from the community that unfortunately couldn't be here today. As I see it, that to make this building usable for the events that we have now and into the future, we need to have this green room changing room accessible from the back straight onto the stage, to keep all the schools together, to keep for disability, to keep them together and keep them accessible and to use it. This, we promised the community this, and I feel we haven't delivered. I think this building can be absolutely great, but we need to finish it so they can use it how they always were promised and expected to use it for now and into the future.
Looking to speakers to this, Councillor Ash.
I'm concerned that if we agree to this as it stands, that we may miss the opportunity to investigate looking at the other option of actually putting a changing room underneath the stage. I totally agree we need to make this building absolutely usable, and I think it's an opportune time to ensure we get it right, whether that be under the stage or out the back. So if we go ahead with this, will that eliminate the opportunity to actually look at an understage option?
On the basis of that, I will foreshadow a motion, and the motion would be that would kick in if this motion doesn't succeed. That council wait until after the Christmas functions occurring in the hall happen, and that the decision around the unbudgeted expenditure and what other options are open are looked at in the early 2021. I'll foreshadow that of my motion. Councillor Belsham.
Yeah, my concern with this motion as it reads does limit it to the provision of a building. So it does not take into account any other options, as in investigating under the stage 4. So I agree with your sentiments, Councillor Ash, and I can see where your foreshadowed motion may bring that into account.
You'd second a foreshadowed motion.
I certainly would.
So mover and second would do. So to be very clear that if the first motion doesn't succeed, that
Yeah, I would just encourage the consideration as we move forward on this, that council are specific about what they want. And I support Councillor Belsham's view that currently it is building a new building, and that's the limit of the scope. We're just checking the resolution at the moment to make sure what changes may need to be made to look at other options. And within that, we would need guidance on this is a multi-purpose venue that will always try and capture the middle ground, you might say. So you're going to exceed some groups and you're going to not exceed others.
You need to be very careful that you're not influencing the council.
I'm just seeking the guidance. Thank you for that. I'm just seeking guidance that we would need to understand what you're looking for in order to implement it. And at the moment, on behalf of staff, we're not clear.
So my understanding is reasonably clear that the motion on the floor from Councillor Dunn and Councillor Carter is quite specific around provision of a budget to investigate the cost estimate of a new changing room, full stop. It's not looking at other options, it is looking specifically at that. Is that? Are there any further questions about the process before we go, please? Councillor Hero.
So what's on the table is only about investigation, and then the next part, and then as we move past that, it'll be the actual costing of actually getting that done.
So the investigation would bring up a cost and the building design and the options to provide that. And council would still need to make a decision at that stage, yes or no.
Could I just, I'd just like to say that I'm not part of the Bulls community at all, because I live in of course in the Northern Ward. But I would like to say that from the times that I've been in there, it's only been, I've been in there once, as in 12 months ago, when it was still getting built. And not being a member of the Bulls community at all and not necessarily going to be using it, I would have thought that it's actually an amazing space to me.
Be careful.
So I'm just trying to understand that.
Haven't spoken to the motion yet, so you're speaking to the motion rather than.
Well, it's already been said by another councillor about on one side of it. I'm just, so if that's been said by one councillor, I would like to.
Yeah, just there were some questions raised around that, but I'll formally go to Councillor Dunn. It is her motion on the floor. Councillor, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Yes. I have a problem with investigating the understage changing area because that's still not accessible unless they put a lift in for people in wheelchairs and so on. There'd have to be some sort of staircase. And we'll come back to a problem with having to have them somewhere else and take them round the back and up the ramp and everything else, where the room built adjoining the back could facilitate all of those users. As for the waiting for after Christmas, I know a lot of the users are waiting to hear if this changing room and areas are going to be built for them to use, maybe hopefully mid next year, for school productions, for wall arts, etc. And as for the marquees and so on that was suggested, well, I can't see how that would work very well either. A lot of these events are held in the middle of winter. They're still going to be walking up outside, up ramps and into the building. So again, to facilitate and be good on our promises to our community, I feel we have to push ahead with this investigation for this building. I would love to say after 7 years and put this whole building behind me as well, but we have not facilitated promises that we made to the community. So I'm still here at the table fighting. So yes, I'd like to see him write it in motion.
Thank you. Councillor, the way I'll handle this, it is a fairly important decision, and I would like to give suspend standing orders so everybody has a chance to speak to that. If a councillor has an objection with that rule, then please let me know now. Right, I'll give everybody the chance to speak to it once, and then I'll come back to a write-up reply. I'll start on this side of the room. Councillor Gordon.
Right, so in terms of this whole process of build, I think we're at the sort of the 98% mark, and it's getting that last 2% really ironed out. The building is functional now. I think there is probably a question mark around, there is a question mark around this changing area, but you know what? We haven't actually tested it. We haven't put it to the test. And I feel, so I'm going to vote against the motion up there. I want to see this used, and I want to know what the problems are, because we've got to get it 100% right. And so I don't know whether adding on a room at the back of the building is the right option, or whether using the space on the third floor is the option, or a marquee outside is option. They've all got pluses and minuses. And we have to weigh up those within a sort of a financial envelope and say, you know what, which gets the best bang for the buck, and which gets us as close to 100% as possible. And even if we designed it in right at the word go, we probably still wouldn't get to 100%. But so I see this next part of this journey, and it's not going to be a very big part, is a little bit iterative. We've got to suck it and see, and we've got to test it, and actually almost test it to failure in some, we're going to have to accept that we're going to get a little bit of egg on our faces occasionally and say, you know what, why is this not working? To try and get it as close to 100% as possible. So I'm going to vote against that motion up there, but I do want to see this sorted.
Councillor Ash.
I absolutely want to see this sorted. I don't believe marquees in the car park is a suitable option. I just want to make sure that we're heading in the right direction. So for that reason, I would actually like to see more information about what the options are before committing to going ahead for a build out the back there.
I agree with the approach to take some time and look at how the building's used. This could possibly be the first cab off the rank of various spaces in the community centre as it's being used for community members to say that's not really what we wanted, it's not working for us, or so forth and so on. So how we deal with this particular one is going to set a tone for how we're going to actually address as issues come up in the future. One of the things that came to my mind just now is that we've got that door to nowhere that's up in the top building, top room. The possibility, if the staff can look at, is building a new purpose-built staircase coming down for that to the back of the stage. And I'd be interested to know if the operatic singer, because she had a fairly substantial dress, had any trouble getting down the staircase to get into the stage. So just little things like that to see whether it is workable. But it's unfortunate that we're at this point where we do have to fix something that should have been taken care of from day one. But here we are. But yeah, the concern for me is that as council, that we approach this in a way that sets a tone for how we're going to address as each part of the building is going to be used moving forward. But I support His Worship's position that we give it time for people to use the building and actually see where the gaps are.
I agree with the previous councillors. It's unfortunate that we're faced with this position. I think it's a fantastic building that is there, but I would like it to be fully used, and I'm going to follow His Worship's. I look forward to deferring and waiting to see how the whole building is used.
Yeah, I agree. If we promised the community that we were going to provide a changing space, and we haven't delivered on that, then that is a concern. But this motion narrows it down to basically providing a metal permanent marquee outside of a building that has been architecturally designed. And to me, I've got a concern with that, of actually, ruining a space in a building that we've spent a lot of money architecturally designing, paying a lot of money towards a designer. So I'd like to see us look at all options, and the foreshadowed motion should cover that. So yeah, I'm speaking against the motion as it stands.
Referring to what Councillor Bishop was talking about, the architecturally designed building. Yes, it was designed to its initial concept, whereas things have been changed inside to accommodate the numbers of people that were required initially, that were promised, and in doing so they've shortened the stage and shortened the foyer area, which has caused havoc with the toilet arrangements.
Can you speak to the motion, please?
Yeah,
Bring
yes.
up a new subject.
With the building itself, let's consider it as not just a changing room, but a multi-purpose room on the ground floor, which would be quite a good size for arts and crafts or whatever, or flower arrangements and everything else to be used. The schools have said that they will use it the first time. If it doesn't work for them, they won't bother. They have been through and used they have thought and looked at what's been provided, and this is their concern that it will not work for them. You've had a professional come through and look at it, and he came up with exactly the same conclusion that the schools came up with, was the fact that the changing rooms and of that nature weren't adequate for the use for productions. And the same with his assistant that he had, who was in theatre. The underground area for modification, having seen the foundations that were used in that building, I would assume it would be an incredible cost to alter the understage area because of the amount of concrete and steel that's gone in. So I will be, as I've seconded, be in favour of the initial motion.
I'll be voting the third recommendation. Now, sorry, the one that hasn't got a number next to it at the moment. Really taking into consideration everything that previous councillors have talked about, and if we're going to do it, let's try and have as many options on the table as possible. So I'll be voting against. Sorry, I'll be voting for the motion that's number 4. Even though there's no number.
Yeah, I probably will be voting against it too, purely for the purpose that we should let it run for a bit and just see what an option may throw up as a better one. I think it's my belief that originally it was supposed to be in the budget and it got taken out, so we do owe it to the people of Bulls and the surrounding community to provide a changing facility. And I'd like to make it perfectly clear that this is the last change we'll ever do to the thing. We don't want this dragging on, that they come back with another thing they want changed and another thing. We'll never get it 100% right, but if we can get it 99.9% right, we've done very well.
Still trying to digest Councillor Lambert's comments. I'm actually going to speak in favour of this motion as it stands, and I'm not referring to the foreshadowed motion, but the motion that stands as it sits, which is the one we're speaking to, because I think it is the quickest way and the best way to facilitate rectifying an issue that we have. There is no doubt anywhere in the correspondence that we went to the Bulls community with that there was changing rooms in that premise. In my mind, there's no doubt about it. I may well stand to be corrected, but it's my understanding that there is no doubt about it, that was a facilitated thing that we consulted on, and it was unanimous that it came back from the people of Bulls that was what was required. So I don't think that's in any doubt, in my humble opinion. The second thing is I don't think that it should come as any surprise to anybody that there's a right of way back through there, because that was also consulted on in the original document. So that should be no surprise to anybody. The quickest way to facilitate rectifying an issue that we have with the building is quite simply to accept the motion as it's sitting up there, as moved by Councillor Dunn and Carter, to get the costings up and running, to get it built, and then move on, which is exactly what Councillor Lambert wants to actually have happen. And by dragging it out with the foreshadowed motion means that we'll be having this conversation in about another year's time. And I don't believe that's going to get us anywhere. So we owe it to the people of Bulls. We said that we're going to build a change rooms. We haven't delivered on it. I urge you to accept the motion as it sits up there and let's move on with it.
Okay, I'm going to speak against the motion. My concerns are, first of all, there's been a number of questions around promising a changing room. There were always a number of multiple options for changing room. So there was an option on the 3rd floor for a changing room there, where you come down flights of stairs. There was an option for changing rooms in the library area with different forms of access to that facility. And there was an option that was on the floor for underneath changing rooms. And I accept that that option is probably a difficult one now, and it may be unsuitable, but I'd like to know the answers around it. I think very strongly that we have not tried this building, and there have been opinions from different people that have suggested it may or may not be suitable. Council employed someone, Mr. Lynch.
I didn't employ, in terms of.
We contacted someone.
So we didn't pay him.
To investigate this, and through the chief executive, and he has never responded. He responded to a councillor, which I find a little bit bizarre. In terms of the opera singer, I spoke to her afterwards, and whereas I didn't specifically say, would you address a problem, I said, were there any problems? She said, no. So there's a group of people, in my view, taking different perspectives on this. But I think, yes, we do need to get it right, but I would like to see the building actually operating and to understand the problems, if there are any, and to look at what are the options. Just before we go to write a reply, there's some further stuff from the Chief Executive that you wish to talk about in terms of letters of support or whatever.
Are you talking about Monolithic?
So I ask for clarification on that.
So we did, you received, Leah received a letter from Monolithic Community Foundation, which they had been alerted to the standard papers and the seniors and supplementary papers. I spoke with the CEO yesterday, and I asked him to answer some questions about whether he was speaking firstly on behalf of the board. He provided information which, as you said, Your Worship, was either one way or the other. And I've just asked him for some more evidence of that. I can give you all that verbatim if you'd like from his response. I mean, I'm not sure if it's going to. It is a letter that's external to the organisation. That I'm not sure this is not staff.
I haven't read it, so you'll
yeah, I believe the issues that has been raised by the Wainui Community Foundation, while they are consistent with the views that other people have presented here, they are consistent with the views of other people, and so there's not a new view. What I would say, his conclusion, which is, I reiterate Wainui Community Foundation's enthusiastic support for this venue. The matter at hand is not one that would jeopardise our funding of the project.
go to write a reply, Councillor Dale.
If you wait to come back to this issue, you, as I think Jill Duncan said, you won't have a problem because they won't be using it. And that's all there is to it. That's already been indicated because it's just too hard. So that's why they're waiting to see if this room will be built. As for the expert, I know the project manager, Andrew Tasker, appointed him to come in. Myself, Councillor Carter, Duncan, and the VCC chairman and staff met with him for about an hour on site. And he has had a lot of experience, as he explained to us within that hour, on managing facilities like the Bulls Community Centre, and you saw his recommendations in those letters. I would be very disappointed with the community if this didn't go through at this time, because it's only going to put it out for another year. And by then we will lose all our users and the reputation for us delivering on promises would really take a hit. So I'm going to leave it there. Sorry?
We've concluded. I now must put the vote to the table. So those in favour of the motion, please raise your hand. Those against? The motion is lost. I now need to put the foreshadowed motion. The council not make a decision on this until after functions, including school functions, have been held, etc. I think we've been over this to some extent. I'll speak very briefly to this as the mover. whatever happens, we need to get this right. And absolutely that's important. But we also need to know exactly what the problems are. And I'm not sure in my mind that we know exactly what the issues are. And we certainly need to look at all possible issues rather than restricting the conversation. Does it have to wait a whole year? No. Effectively, we'd be in a position in January to be able to revisit this. I don't believe that we actually lose a lot of time. Right. Call for speakers, two or four of the shadow of mountain. Councillor Belsh and Councillor Ash. Councillor Belsh.
Yeah, I certainly support this, as this gives us an opportunity to look at other options rather than add on to what is an architecturally designed building. I'd be very disappointed if the users don't give this building an opportunity to actually be used and find out where their concerns really lay. They'd provide an opinion without even holding events in there. So I'd be extremely disappointed with the Bulls community if that happens after what this council has gone through to get to this stage. It's not saying we're not looking at changing room options if that is an issue. It's saying that we're going to look at potential options, other options.
Councillor Ash, I think you had your hand up.
I'm very, very keen for us to look at what all the options are, but I'm very cognizant of the narrative around this maybe taking a year, and I would be very keen to actually see a time frame in this. So if we're waiting for functions to be held at the end of this year, can we put a time frame after that whereby we have those conversations and then start the process so it does not drag on?
My advice to you would be that you'd be effectively seeking an amendment in terms of inserting a time frame or date. That's your right.
I would be keen to, but I don't know what that time frame looks like. I mean, February.
So you're seeking an amendment that this comes back to the February meeting, which effectively is virtually the first meeting of council for the year.
Christmas holidays, we're taking.
This isn't about doing the analysis, this is about this is purely about being able to hold some functions and get some feedback, and then the council decision is made around what the options are. Would you be happy that councillors, if the understanding is at the earliest possible time next year? I think staff have got that as an understanding. Further speakers? Otherwise I'll put it to the vote. Right, I'm not going to use my right of reply, especially as people have spoken. So I'll put to the vote. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. Number 14, the update on communication activities October 2020. Attachment 7, pages 97 through to 100. That the report on communication activities be received. Would somebody like to move it, and then we'll move through to. I'll move a second or two. Councillor Wilson second, and those in favour. Those against. Carried. And would you like to take us through it?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm very happy to take questions. This is pretty self-explanatory. We have had a lot of early engagement activities for the long-term plan, and I've been really thrilled with both the staff support and especially the councillor support, and those where people or councillors wearing their t-shirts. It's been really great. The Tutionary event was another really good one, so we'll just continue that for as long as necessary. Councillor.
Yes, I've placed an article in the Huntable Huntaway Bulletin advising local people of the upcoming engagement of the schmozzles. It's the least I could do with the support shown by fellow councillors of intention to attend the event.
Should be good turnout.
Should
Thank you. Are you putting that as an amendment or addendum to the report?
Heading it to the
We'll take it as such. Further questions for the report or the items that are in it? No. Okay, we don't have to do anything other than receive it, so I'll move to item number 15, the Chief Executive's report, pages 101 through to 114. Just to tidy up the process, would somebody like to move that it be received? Councillor Gordon, Councillor Parker. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Thank you. And could you move through your report, please? Those on pages 101 through 114.
Thank you, Worship. Mostly take it as read, but I'll go through some points I do wish to highlight. Firstly, on page 102.3, I do want to reiterate that I acknowledge the desire by elected members to improve our customer reporting system, and you'll see there that it is a highlight of the project. It has started, and we are already creating some small wins as we go. What is important to consider here as well is Appendix 2 to my report is what I would at best say is erroneous in terms of my reporting to you. I don't anticipate you will see this report again, and I have to declare I do not have confidence in the numbers that are shown there. And I say that because of the analysis that's going on in the background, where I think the reporting of our service performance is what we report quarterly to you, which is our commitment as part of the annual plan. This is an operational breakdown, which I don't believe should have appeared in my report. So whilst it's there, I'm not asking for it to be rescinded. I am saying that as part of the review that we're doing with our customer interaction, I can't tell you with confidence those numbers are correct in Appendix 2.
So we just take on the advice the service increase breakdown.
Yes.
With a grain of salt.
Correct. Yes, thank you, Your Worship.
To put it quite openly. Thank you. Very honest assessment from the Chief Executive. Let's carry on.
I like presenting elected officials with accurate information for them to act on, Your Worship. And so, yeah, thank you. I will move to point 6, which is the MOU regarding the current Monolithic Bridge, and Anna will talk to that.
Thank you very much. So where we are with this is we produced a memorandum of understanding between the two councils and the Heritage Monolithic group. We used an NZTA standard format that they have for another bridge in the country that's quite similar. That document was then given to the Heritage group, and we've asked them for changes and comments to that. That then has come back to us for our views on the changes. Once we're done with it on our side, we'll send it over to MDC, they'll do the same. And only then it will be finalised, the agreement between us and them, and what the memorandum of understanding will actually look like. So we're a couple of weeks off from getting the finals.
And excuse my confusion here, the report says there'll be a tabled report, and you're talking about something that council seem to be going to finalise. Are you able to present the report to us?
No, I think it's just a business.
It just says up there.
Yes, so the MOU itself, so I'm not sure where we written that we're going to be tabled. I would take your advice if you'd like, if council would wish to see that MOU before it's signed.
expect different answers. That's what I was expecting.
Yep.
So,
Very happy to
councillors, what's your view here? I'm just nervous about an MOU that staff are prepared to sign on behalf of council or ask me to sign that you haven't seen.
Your worship, if I may, it would appear that the process is incomplete. So, I mean, if we let the process run its course and then it comes back to us for either approval or disapproval, whichever the case is.
I just the way it sounded as though the update means that we approve and then it goes to Manor 2 for
No.
enactment. So it does
Our
come
approval will include
Okay.
the whole process, not just.
Okay, thank you.
Just to finalise that, so we're clear, when would you expect it to come back to council?
I would expect it to come back to council once both teams have given their input to the changes that's been made. Otherwise, it'll just keep going back and forth. So once we have a final version that we think is good for us and good for the heritage group, we will then present it to both councils to say, do you agree with this or have you got any change?
Okay, I'm happy with the process.
Thank you. Item 7 on Three Waters. I'll talk briefly on that and invite Arno to continue. So if you recall, we are currently working on a delivery plan with the Department of Internal Affairs and their agents, I might say, in government. That's how we intend to spend the 4.8 million. We've previously resolved to the projects that we had recommended to you. And we are working with DIA on that funding agreement to 4.8 million. That will be something that, because you've already resolved, and unless there are material changes, it stays within the signature of His Worship and I. We're now just negotiating the final iterations of that. Arno and I attended a call yesterday for all chief executives in the country on this issue. And what they've advised is that we shouldn't forget that the money of the Three Waters funding certainly gave us 4.8 million to build some assets as part of the stimulus funding, but there was a considerable requirement sitting behind it for council to provide a lot of information on the state of our assets, the cost of replacing those assets, everything that was talked about in the workshop with Horizons earlier. They have acknowledged that that is a large piece of work and have asked for us in the revised agreement that we're currently working on, that of the 4.8 million, they are instructing us to set aside $60,000 for us to employ someone to help us. Bear in mind that we are required to submit in February next year. It's quite a task. Now, I perhaps I might not be in the right order here, Your Worship, but you have resolved 4.8 million in the projects, and we've been invited by DAA to take $60,000 of one of those projects. I'm not sure if you wish for it to come back to council, or if that needs to be a resolution. I should have sought your advice earlier. Forgive me.
Any guidance from councillors before I think of this? I guess the question from me is that we're required as part of the MOU to provide data.
Yes.
So the question then is, do we fund it out of that and cut that money back, or do we fund the collection of that data from internal sources? So I'll put it back on your plate. Where do you see that funding being taken from? Unbudgeted expenditure or from shared the assets portfolio in some way in terms of capital not spent? Where do you say?
I think it's quite a novel idea, and I think it's worth investigating. I'm not sure about the numbers sitting here, but I'm sure we can look into it. And,
We could take it out of the 100 bits.
yeah, absolutely.
So, councillors, I'm quite happy that staff are left. We've got a contract that says we have to provide this information. So that's not a council decision. We're now into almost an operational process as to how they fund, in my view. So that's the wrong way. Work it out.
That's understood, thank you. Do you want to add anything to that?
Just a very short note. The idea was to present something, but then because we had the workshop last week, Thursday, specifically on the Three Waters update, and we did at that workshop hand you a very handy update from the Department of Internal Affairs. I think that is probably as sufficient as it will be. So, you got any questions referred to that, or we'll just come back to us?
Councillor Doug.
Just further to the discussion this morning with Horizons and their recommendations, I just wondered if any of our priorities have changed.
The three priorities that we have been working on is the areas where we are known to have expired consents, and that is Rasna, Martin and Bulls. Now Rasna is a work in progress currently, and we have been working with the Ministry for the Environment on a solution for that. The Martin and Bulls were mostly funded by the 4.8 million. So they are being, they won't be eradicated, but there'll be a considerable step forward to that consent that we're looking for. And the final one, which was explicitly from a consent perspective this morning, was Papakai Pump Station, and that was several $100,000 within the funding that we've agreed to.
You happy with the answer?
Thank you, Worship. I'll move to section 13, and Carol has a comment to make here.
Just a couple of questions on the other section to skip.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
First of all, the road closure.
Yep.
That's all covered. Councillor Belcher.
A question, or sorry, not a question, but actually a comment around that. I do understand that event has been postponed, and communication has been had with Mr. Bernardi. So I understand this road closure notice has gone through, but there needed to be more time frame between finalising the date. So that that event won't be happening until February, March next year. But we'll keep that correspondence open in regards to that.
Councillor Ash, questions leading up to item 13?
Yeah, so it's on item number 8, just a query, wondering whether or not the ability to extrapolate that information around dog owners is a possibility at some stage. It's a little bit concerning that we're going out with this consultation and yet not able to touch base with the people that it directly affects. It would be really nice if we could.
Understand, and I know that staff are grappling with this
Yes, yeah, thank you, Worship. We're literally talking quite big numbers to get this information out. And so we decided it probably wasn't worth spending that amount of money to do that. Like the Chief Executive has said, we're making improvements in a lot of areas on our software systems and programs, and in future we hope to be able to do this ourselves. At the moment we have to go to our provider and get that, and the cost per hour to do that is significant. So what we thought we would do is extend the consultation like we said in the paper, and we're doing that as part of all the LTP engagement as well, and I think we've had very good response to that. So for this time, unfortunately, that's our recommendation, is that we don't proceed down that meter drop. I know it sounds like it's probably a simple task, but when it was investigated, it was far from simple.
So we'll go onto our website and go onto the monitor and time frames are extended. So councils, any community groups that you're part of, please make sure that we push it where we can. Councillor Belcher.
So the leaflets that have been provided, has there been any thought given to distributing that through the monitor, so it's not an actually ad in the monitor but actually inserted?
And we are doing that.
You are?
So I can maybe comment on that. So similar to the annual residence survey with the dropout flyers we had. So we're looking at doing that, but we've had a chat to the district monitor for them doing it for their residential urban boundary that they have. So that distribution, so it go to all of them.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Can I just stop for a second? Leah, are we getting any feedback around people not being able to hear or anything like that we need to be aware of? Okay, thank you very much. I was just aware people were talking off the back of the room. Any further ones leading up to 13? No, thanks, Carol.
Would you be able to just come up by point and ask if there are any questions? Point 13, a recommendation refers in 17.3. I'll take it as read. So that's that's 17.3 is. Oh no, you were just starting there. Sorry, forgive me. I'll go back to 17.2.
Right, thank you. I just wanted to make a point with this request under the events cancelled due to COVID-19. We are just asking that we won't, or suggesting we don't make a decision on this today. We're actually getting some more information about the criteria around what was actually proposed with the funding. So we're waiting for clarification of that. So we'll hold that recommendation off until next month when we have the full information for you.
So that's with regard to 17.2.
That's right.
I don't see any implication from that, but have you connected back to the organisation Project Martin around that? That's fine with me. Or will we just do that? Yep.
South Makarikuri School. So this was an event that wasn't able to be held, and as we state here, they've asked if the money can be carried forward, but in making that decision, it's just worthwhile noting that criteria has changed for this fund for next year. So whatever way you decide to go, you just need to be mindful of that. And obviously the event didn't happen this year.
Be useful if somebody put a motion on the floor for day one. Councillor Dawson.
Okay, so my motion would be that council agrees to carry forward the $1,300 to South Makarikuri School to hold their forest fundraising event.
Can we speak further?
It's just that at the time when they applied for the funding, that was the criteria. So I don't think we can actually take it off them if we've already funded them under that criteria. And it's been unfortunate that COVID stopped the thing from happening this year.
I suspect this may be approved. Are there any speakers against the motion? Happy if I put it straight to a vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Still much short circuit.
With respect to number 2 in front of us, Your Worship, that's one we've agreed to move forward. Something we need to assess. Point 14, the Joint Climate Change Committee. Michael McCarthy jumped the gun by saying thank you to Your Worship for being part of that working group. That's what this item refers to. Recommendation 17.4 calls for your approval for that. Agrees to Your Worship as the designated delegate.
Which is common to the mayors at this stage, and they will change in the future. So I'm not going to move. Councillor Corden, you move.
Happy to move, Your Worship.
Seconded. Councillor Philippa. Anybody speaking against? The vote, those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you.
Point 15, Dora Pope. We were presented at the last meeting from Mark Taylor. There was a number of requests. They are detailed in part of my report with some recommendations in section 17.5. They are the request for financial assistance of $58,000 and or a request for rates remission and or consenting fees to be waived.
Um, Does anybody have a motion or view that they wish to put to the table? Councillor Wilson.
My motion is that 17.5 not be approved.
In total,
In total.
so you're not wanting to move in any shape.
On 17.5, no. But I do have other, I would like to move all the other ones at points as well, but would you like to deal with them separately?
It may be useful, I think.
Okay.
So you're wishing to move that 17.5.1,
Yes,
the declined,
not approved, yeah.
looking for a seconder to that. You wish to speak to it?
You asking me to speak to it, Your Worship?
Would you give me
Yeah,
that?
I just didn't know if I had a second.
Yes, you do.
I did have a second.
Yes,
I think, whilst I understand the intent of the request, I think it sets a fairly dangerous precedent that I don't think would be tenable to council going forward. I understand the intent of the request, that's why I don't think it's appropriate that we step into that space.
Any speakers to or for or against? Councillor Parnapa?
I think the bigger picture here is important, that homelessness is definitely a concern that we should all be aware of. To support them in the principle is great, but in terms of actually a district-wide solution, I think given the current political circumstances, there are probably other avenues whereby we can meet that need without having to just focus on this one thing. So in principle, we support what they're doing, but there's a bigger picture here that I think we need to deal with as a council.
Any other speakers? I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour of the motion to decline?
Aye.
Those against? Motion is carried. So 17.5.2, we'll deal with this one separately. This is seeking a rate remission. The report does indicate that rentals will be charged. So there is a commercial aspect to this somewhere in this place.
I move that rate permission not be granted based on the, as is noted in the report, that under the relocation house policy as a new dwelling, it would meet the $5,000 rate remission anyway. So on this particular one, I'd suggest that it not be granted.
Just a point around that meeting that $5,000 rate remission. My understanding, it is relocating the house from within the district back to the district. So it's not a new home, but I understand that the house is no longer habitable or used on the property. So I'd be prepared to accept the possibility of that.
On that, Your Worship, it would still become a new rating entity into the district, would it not? In which case, then the policy would apply.
The policy is quite specific about a house. I take
It's an additional rating entity, though.
As I said, I'm quite prepared, but I just need to make sure that councillors were aware that it's the relocation of the Councillor Carter.
Second motion.
Seconding the motion, who speak to it? Peter?
No, Your Worship, I think I've said everything I need to say there.
Speakers? Put it to the vote, those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. So would you like to be more specific around inviting a motion to invite them to apply?
Yes, I would think that if that could be worded in there somewhere as an undertaking, or whether it requires a second motion that to apply for our rates relief or our under the policy.
So just some information might help you. It's not clear to staff currently if the building is relocated from outside the district or not. We're just double checking on that.
I know where it's coming from.
You do definitely?
It's
Okay, all right, that answers that question. Thank you. So that it wouldn't normally then be.
Well, perhaps your motion could be that you invite them to apply for, that would still give the delegated authority to be approved or declined.
That's what's up there for most staff and suppliers, just that they apply for 5,000 rex permission.
Yeah, you can't do that. There has to be a separate motion. You just can't add it all to something that's already been passed. Sorry. But is that the essence of, would that help you?
Yes, but I'm going to ask the chief executive through you, your worship, as to whether he's comfortable to accept that before I put that up there. Because it looks as though it's some concern.
If I am to apply the rules as they stand, it would not be eligible for a $5,000 rate submission.
So where your worship is aware of where the house is coming from, but is it a rateable entity at the moment though? Does it currently have rates being applied to it?
Part of the farm, the rates would be subject to the entire property, the capital value of the entire property. The house would probably have a fairly low rating impact, as I understand.
I'm sorry, but if I may, the question that I ask is under the policy, if a house comes into the district, it could be from Central House Movers down the road, it's in the district, but it doesn't attract the rates it's sitting up on file. If it becomes a new rateable entity in the district, therefore it is a new house in the district, therefore the policy of my understanding would apply.
I'm not sure that I agree with you. But I think what you're signaling here is intent. And I think you could rule that by saying that they advise, that you advise them to apply, invited to apply.
Well, I would move that if there were two things I would move, it if there was a second for it, if the chief executive was happy for me to move it.
I'll second.
If this was to say that instead of a 50 or 75 or 100 that's not approved, that we will grant a $5,000 rates remission, that makes my life get easy. Because you're not asking me to contribute.
Which is in 5.3.
The county is excluded, you're inviting them to apply to me. And when I apply my analysis of it, on a face it, I wouldn't offer a rebate. And so if your intent is to offer a $5,000 rebate or to instruct me to do so, then I wouldn't actually refer to that policy and just offer, instead of the 50 or 75 or 100, just invite me to offer a $5,000 rates rebate.
That council offers.
Yeah.
So that council offers a $5,000 rate remission.
Yes, yeah, I'll be happy with that.
Yeah, I would be happy to still continue to have that as a motion, yes. With that word change.
So that would be a one-off $5,000 rates remission. Can you say one-off?
Yeah. The mover and second are still happy with the motion. I think we're getting to where you want to be. Any speakers to the motion? I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? No. Those against? Carried. Thanks very much.
I'd like to move 5.3 that consent fees be waived to a level of 50%. Is that the internal, do we normally classify it as internal consenting fees?
Yeah.
You're happy to move?
Yes.
Looking for a seconder?
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Gordon seconding. Wish to speak to it?
Yeah, this organisation is trying to help out a situation of something that's emerging in not just this district, but districts right across this country. And I think it would be remiss of us as council not showing some support into their efforts that they're going to. So I think this would get huge support across the district ratepayer base. So I think we should be certainly supplying them that support.
Thank you. Any speakers too? I'll speak in support. think the intent is fantastic. We have an issue and they're trying to, and they're setting themselves up as a charitable organisation to try and help. So we need to give them some support. Any further speakers? You wish to write a reply?
No.
Put it to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Very much. We will stop at 3.
Before we move off this topic, would it be appropriate for me to signal that I'd like to see this item around new rating entity put it in front of the next policy meeting, just to clarify this little grey area? Or should I do that at the end of this meeting?
Look, I'm quite happy if you put it as a recommendation attached to this.
Yes, I'd like to do that. Do you want a motion on the floor?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'd move that the issue around separate rating entities and new builds be clarified at a future policy meeting with respect to permissions.
Second, Councillor Wilson.
Sorry, we haven't actually got it up on here. Nice thing said verbally, but my preference is to have it.
Separate rating entities and
New builds.
and new builds.
Might be the policy.
Yeah.
Policy around.
Right. A future policy at a future policy meeting. Yes. Yes. The intent is all there, Your Worship. So.
Yeah, right, I'll put it to vote. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Motion is carried. Thank you. Move to item number 16. These are the top 10 projects. They're on your supplementary order paper. And would somebody move, please, that we receive? Councillor Lambert moving, Councillor Wilson seconding. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you.
Councillor Lambert, can you find it? Have you got it?
Yeah.
I'm just looking at your face. So.
You must have it. It's just
My computer's changed its layout. I'm just getting the hang of it. Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think we'll do the same as every other month. I'll step through them. If you've got any questions, we'll deal with them as we go. So the first one is the Monolithic bridge replacement. Any questions on that one?
Just wanting confirmation, what tonnage is this bridge? Is it a 50-ton bridge?
I will check that for you. I'm not sure.
Thank you.
Nothing further on the Monolithic bridge replacement. So you are going to check. I'm fairly certain that it is actually. Absolutely certain.
I'll just confirm.
Yeah.
We'll move on to number 2, the Mundables Wastewater Centralisation Project.
Yep.
No questions there. Number 3 is the upgrade of the Ratana wastewater treatment plant.
Can I just the pipeline that we're putting in? There's 2 questions from me. First of all, the flow, proverbially, it does flow downhill, so there's no pumping stations required.
There is a pumping station. That's a really good point to make, though. So there is a slight rise out of Martin, not far, maybe 1.5 kilometers, and from there it's gravity, and it can actually gravity all the way out to St.
Brilliant.
Okay, yeah, really important point.
The second point is around the future of, I'm not quite sure what happens to the existing treatment plant at Crofton. How much of that is decommissioned and how much of it becomes a whole source?
We are working on the details around that, because when you look at the plant as an asset, it is actually still in pretty good condition as an asset. So what we're doing with the experts is to see if we would bring it back to the original design, what can it actually achieve as it stands? The idea really is, once we got that information, we can make an informed decision about, do we use it for treatment and gravity all the way out to Santoff, or do we have to go to Bulls, treat it there at a more specialized plant, and then pump it all the way out to Santoff? So there's a huge financial implication in those 2 decisions.
I just wouldn't like to see 2 parallel settings. Consents applied all the time. That's what I'm really gauging. The last piece around that is I think you were going to convene that public group. Please, we need to either convene and disband, or at least tell them where we're at. Thank you.
Can you just make sure we've got that as an undertaking?
Yeah.
Suburban wastewater. Yeah,
My question, Gary, has come up before, but you're searching for suitable land and none's becoming available. Are we just looking for land to come on the market, or are we approaching landowners to purchase land? Or
we have got in contact with agents in the area, and they contact us immediately if something does come available, so we can go and have a look at it. So there's been 3 or 4 pieces so far, and that's kind of where it is. So if something becomes available, that is.
So we're not actually approaching landowners to say, you've got a paddock there that's perfect for this, you want to sell it?
No.
Next one.
Ratana wastewater treatment plant. Nothing there. We'll move on to number 4.
Just for a second, remembering that the Ratana wastewater that we're looking at with support from the Ministry for the Environment and Horizons, and we're looking at a land disposal option, and we're looking at leasing lands from iwi, and we're meeting with them as per Arno's report. The same logic in the same Ministry for Environment funding we would turn to in early next year for that property. And so really Ratana is a little bit of a, I wouldn't say a test case, but it's not usual. And so in the conversations with Horizons and the Ministry for the Environment on Ratana, we have been looking at Bulls as a potential similar model.
Can I reply to my statement? Sure. Yeah, just as a farmer myself, I know there's quite often a farmer will have a paddock that he finds very unproductive, or it's a waste of time, and you could well see an area down there that ticks a lot of boxes, and you could approach the farmer and say, well, look, you know, this, we'd be very keen, if you're keen to sell us that paddock, it's actually perfect for what we want. So,
thank you. It's going to be like 50 years with a phosphorus.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Shall we move on to number 4? Any questions on number 4? Number 5 is the Bulls Community Centre. Number 6 is the new
question here.
Question.
It says in the number 5, a list of corrections and repairs before the code of compliance. How were there many when it came to that? concerns over that? Do we need to know anything about getting the code of compliance?
Yeah, how that works is first we have a very intense inspection with all the experts and the architect and the builder. So they produced a long list of little things that needed correction. And then we had another inspection with the BCO, and they produced another list. We add all those lists together, and then we have a final snags list or corrections list. So the list is long, but they are minor things. On the long list, there would only be one or two more major things. The one is the stair well at the back, but I think that has been rectified already. And the second one,
What was the problem with the stair?
the height between the roof is actually, it's one of the 5 pipes, and the stair itself was just under 2, so let's say 1950 odd, and it should be 210. So going to rectify that. And the other one has to do with the door frames for the fire doors. So we're working through that one. So those are the 2 major ones. The others are all tighten a screw and add something to them.
So with access to the stage.
Yeah, that's for the railings and the little bit of the complete. So that's
Supplementary question.
It has come to my attention there's been a lot of trouble with the lift. Is there a good solution for this that keeps breaking down? A lot of the oldies cannot get up to that library.
Yeah. So that is under defects liability. So the installers have to come back and fix it every time it happens. So far I'm aware of 2 breakdowns that we've had, and I'm not sure what's caused it, but they have to come back and get it going.
I think if it continues, we'll take a different approach because it wouldn't be there for that purpose.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move on. Number 6 is the new civic centre down, well, in Martin, if you are able to rephrase that. Any questions on that one? Number 7 is the Kai Happy Memorial Park development, and we're going to discuss that shortly. So, any questions there?
So questions there will fold it into the report.
The Kai Happy Civic Centre is on hold a little bit at the moment. Number 9 is Quitterino Landfill. Any questions on that? Here we go.
So just clarification there. So I believe the consent hasn't been lodged yet. Yet I read here that work's going to start for the end of November. Is that timeframe listed?
Yeah, so what we've done is we have engaged WSP to assist us with the consenting requirements for this. Very tricky, and we want to move really fast. So I'm sure you can remember I brought a report around the methodology, so we were waiting for that. Now that we have that, we can start preparing the paperwork. That will take some time, and the application will take some time. But because this is emergency work, we can get work done immediately under the emergency provisions, with the application being lodged at the same time.
Thank you.
So just clarification around that. When will the debtor start thinking?
That's a good question. We in the process now of trying to sort out all the contractual relationships with the contractor. It will take a bit of time, so maybe 2 weeks or so, and then we can start planning the work. So I could come back with, in the next top 10, we would probably have 18. All right, then we look at the subdivisions. We have got George Street. Any questions on George Street? Here we go.
Where are they looking at seeing the stormwater after the investigations? It doesn't really.
So the investigations will take, well, I'll step back a little bit. I think first of all, we have worked with the developer very closely to allow him to move along and get his 223 and 224's certificates for the properties that he wants to sell. There's only 2 left over that we're going to have to hang on to until we can sort this out. Yeah, it's a certificate to say that you have complied with the conditions of your subdivision, and that everything that you needed to do has been ticked off, and you can now proceed and sell the property. And that was really important to the developer, as you can imagine. So like I said, the only one that's left is 2 properties that we just going to have to wait, and he's fairly comfortable with that. The work that we need to complete is substantial, will take some time. Depends on what happens in that will then determine how we will apply for the consent to get this done. All of those things will take quite a bit of time. Hereford Heights. Any questions around Hereford Heights? Yeah, really. So the rest of them are smaller ones. Any questions on any of the other subdivisions?
Thank you, Councillor Dalgety.
Sorry, just it hasn't made this list, but Martin Memorial Hall. Just want to make sure that in the renovation of that, is my view is, or my understanding is, basketball is very popular. In fact, one of the most popular sports in New Zealand, and so is our renovation going to make sure that basketball is going to be continue to be able to use in that hall?
Okay.
Thank you.
It should be included. Yes, thank you very much.
Can I just get some clarification around, sorry, do you have a question?
Yeah, just one question about that. I was asked by a resident last week as to who's paying for the street lighting that's on that street of the Papakanga area. Is it the council paying for it, or? Okay, because those lights are on.
I don't think it was actually active in the MOU we have, but that's private land.
Okay.
And our agreement is to maintain the assets providing in the construction.
Okay.
Just before we sort of go off the sorts of infrastructural things, Memorial Hall, the park, the playground upgrade, the toilet there's been questions about colour. And can we get clarification around this? My understanding is that are we able to deal with it somewhere else, or is this?
We could, as a late item in your worship, or now, it would be your choice.
Can we do it now so it doesn't get lost?
So Martin Memorial Hall Playground is being fundraised by most of the community. Council is undertaking some of the work, including some drainage and the rear car park and a few other bits and pieces. And we are also undertaking the project management of it. We are also installing a toilet. And the toilet we have chosen is identical to the 2 you've seen in Martin recently in terms of its design. We've been asked to, forgive me for this question, but we've been asked to colour it in a certain colour that's sympathetic with the rest of the playground equipment. However, the other options toilets we've installed in Martin, we've tried to maintain the same colour, which is the blue colour. And the question is, would you prefer, a question is, would you prefer to change it so it's this colour? You'll see that from there, it's sympathetic with the playground, or maintain the colour of blue, which is, we're hoping to be consistent throughout Martin. And staff doesn't have a view on what's that.
Oh, there's a lot of fingers going up. I know where you're going to go.
Colour line.
We take a turn. Councillor Ash, I think you won by a whisker. Are you wishing to move?
I would definitely support keeping it in the colour that's going to be sympathetic with the playground, so that it looks like a complete project.
Let me guess, you're wishing to second that?
Yes. Yeah, there has been some debate and concern amongst that group that we were wanting to keep the blue theme going, and there's been a designer involved in this off in the school, and that's not the colour that they wanted within this whole scheme. So wholeheartedly I would support that colour, and so would all of the group that are in behind it.
Is there any brave person that wishes to speak against this?
A little biased, this was the blue one.
The blue one's down in Centennial Park.
I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour?
Uh,
Those against? Carried. Got your answer. Councillors, I think we will adjourn for a break. Please be aware that we will come back at, for those online, at 25 past. And we'll resume with item 12, bearing in mind that after item 12, we'll go back to item 11. So, we're offline now.